Hi, this is Robin, and in this workshop, I'm going to be talking about and demonstrating how to create reusable color stylization templates in Photoshop. Now, just think about it. When you create sets or series of images, or if you want to be recognized by your signature style, using consistent color stylizations across a given project or across your entire portfolio is important. If you create color templates in Photoshop, then you can easily reapply custom color looks that you've created to other photos. So that's what I'm going to do. In this video, I'll show step by step how to create reusable color style templates that are built from Photoshop adjustment layers and how to reapply them to other images. Now, in previous videos, I've demonstrated how to create custom LUTs, which is the abbreviation for lookup tables, and also shown how to use Camera Raw filters capabilities for color grading and creating presets. What I'm showing here with these templates is a little bit different thing. So it's not something that's typically shown out there on the web. So it's a new technique for you to pick up on. I will include links to my previous related tutorials in the description below this video in case you'd like to try those other methods too. I think it's just always handy to have multiple tools at your disposal to achieve similar types of goals. I will also include the links of those I can include to the stock photos that I'm using in this video, and they'll be in that description as well. Before we get started, one last sort of backgroundy type of information, which is why is color consistency important? And I think there's 3 or 4 main reasons. So one is I think that consistent color style helps your work stand out and then be instantly recognizable as yours. So if I was still in my business career, I'd say it's your branding. You know, it's what gets associated with you. The second benefit to color consistency is that when you use uniform color grading across a project or portfolio, it makes your work feel more intentional and more professional, at least I think so, and the work sort of visually hangs together better. The final thing, or maybe next to final thing, is that the colors you use to color grade can support a narrative or emotional tone that you want to portray. So the colors that you use can support your visual storytelling. They have a psychological impact. So for example, warm and muted colors might suggest nostalgia, whereas if something is cool and contrasty and dark, then it would be more dramatic. So you can reinforce what you're trying to convey with your images with the color stylizations that you use. If the colors that you use are consistent across a project or across your portfolio, then the messages and the stories that you're trying to convey will be carried along by the color message as well. And then, you know, again, as I'm sitting here looking at my pictures on my screen, these are all from Yosemite, and that's what I'm going to use for the demos. And I will say they are all stock photos. 2 of them are from Unsplash, 1 is from Pexels, and I've got the makers' names here just to give them credit. But if you're taking your own photos on separate days, separate times of days, different times a year, by adding a color stylization template across all your images, again, it gives it the consistent feeling that maybe you took them all at the same time or they all fit together. So those to me are my rationales for why a color template in Photoshop is useful. So let me just give you one more administrative thing and then we'll dive right into the demo. So if you are new to my channel or haven't subscribed yet and you want to be notified of my future Photoshop workshops, please just click the free subscribe button and the black bell icon that are below this video to get a single notification direct from YouTube when I release new content each month. If you are already subscribed, there is no need to click again. You just do it once and you are all set. So let me pause, be sure everything is set up here for the demo, and then we can get right into that step-by-step demo. Okay, so this is the demo on how to create Photoshop color styling templates using adjustment layers. So I'm going to use this as my base image, this image from, I guess it's Mirror Lake in Yosemite. And the first thing you want to do before we do anything is duplicate your background layer in your layers panel. So you can left click and drag that to the add new layer icon, which is that box with the plus, and you get a copy. Or you can do a Control or Command J to make a copy that'll just jump the copy right up there. They're interchangeable, so do what you prefer. Now, the first thing you have to decide on if you're going to be creating a color styling template is what you want your color look to be. So I decided that because these images are all rather on the bluish side, I'm going to try to create a template that is sort of warm and cinematic. And when I think warm colors. Those are the reds, the yellows, the oranges. And when I think about a sort of a cinematic look, I think of the blacks get a little bit lifted and a little bit hazy. Okay, so that's what I'm going to try to go for here, is those warm colors and a little bit of a slight haze look to this. Okay, so once you've decided on the look that you want to go for, then you can start opening your Photoshop adjustment layers to start building your look. I am going to use a number of adjustment layers, but this is not a formula. So I'm just showing you a bunch of them just so you can see what different adjustment layers can create for you. You can use as few or as many adjustment layers as you want to build your look. So don't take this as this is the only way to do it. Bottom of the layers panel, I'm going to first add a curves adjustment layer. So to add an adjustment layer, go to the circle with the line, left click, I'm coming down to where it says curves, and now we have a curves layer added to our layer stack. If you're not familiar with my videos, I have my layers stack at the top, I have my properties panel down here at the bottom, and I have my toolbar docked right for convenience. Okay, so we've got the curves adjustment layer open, and that's a way to kind of control contrast and tone curve shaping. So I think what I want to do on this first curve is just create a very gentle S curve that will affect the entire image, which I refer to as a global curve. So in the properties panel, where the curve is associated with that layer, I'm going to click right in the center of the grid, and I'm just going to pull it up very slightly since I want to brighten this up a little bit. And if you can see on the curve, it goes from dark to light. So from lower to higher is brighter, and from left to right is brighter. So I'm just going to bring this up just a little bit. And again, no formulas to where I'm putting this. You just look at your image and decide what you like. Okay, to get that S curve, then I'm going to go up to this next grid line, and I'm just going to also pull that up a little bit. And then I'll come down to this grid line, left click, and I'm pulling that down just a little bit, just to counterbalance, just do a very subtle S curve, as you can see here. Now, I said right up front, I wanted to give this a bit of a cinematic look. So what I want to do is with this data, or this little curve point down at the bottom of the curve, far left, I want to lift that up just, I'm lifting the blacks. If you watch the image, you'll see it goes a little softer. Here, I'll do it more dramatically so you can see. So I want that to be a little bit lifted to give it that sort of hazy cinematic look. So this is my initial curve. So I'm going to label this by double clicking on that word global curve. Okay. Now, you're not limited to only have to do a global curve like that. You can also work with the color curves. So coming to the bottom of the layers panel, clicking on that line with the circle with the line through it, the add new adjustment layer, I'm going to add another curves layer right there. Okay. This time, what I want to do, looking at the properties panel for that layer, is as opposed to using all RGB, which I did on this first layer, I want to click on this little down arrow, and you'll see you can work individually on the reds, the greens, or the blues. Okay, so you get a different color curve depending on what you want to work with. So because I want to move this more towards warmer colors, I'm going to start with the red curve for mine. Okay, so On the way these color curves work is for the given color, the red, if you pull up, it's going to be more red. If you pull down, it's going to be the opposite of red, which would be cyan. So let me just show you. If I pull up, see how we're introducing more reds, and if you pull down, you're introducing more cyans. So you can adjust whichever way. So let's say you want to go more cool. You might want to pull it down towards the cyans, okay? But I want to add just a hint of the red, and I don't want to get too magenta with this. And again, I'm going to keep coming up down here at the lower part of the curve just to keep the reds. Get some warmer colors in here. I don't want it to be too much. Okay, so that's it, good for the red curve. Then the other curve I'm going to do, and you could do these as separate layers. I'm just going to do these color curves on the same layers. So I'm next going to do blue because, as I said, I want to go warmer. And the opposite of blue is yellow. So again, if I were to come up, I go more blue. If I go down, it's yellow. So this time I'm going to be going more towards down in the yellows to infuse a little bit more warmth into this scene here, okay? And again, you just click and adjust where you want and just watch your image and see if it's doing what you want it to. I can't give you numbers or formulas for how to work with this. Okay, so let's just turn that on and off and say, yeah, so we've definitely gotten more into the warmer kind of color families by doing the red and the blue. Now, as I mentioned, I'm not going to work with the green, but if you do for your image, the opposite of green is magenta. So if you want to add more greens or some magenta, then you would add a green color curve. So let me just label this one as the red-blue curves. Okay, so that is good. All right, so now I'd say I'm okay for the two curves adjustment layers. So now let me move on to a different kind of adjustment layer to keep building this color stylization that I want to create. So this time I'm going to use a color balance adjustment layer, and the color balance adjustment layer will let you adjust shadows, midtones, and highlights separately. So let's do that. So again, bottom of the layers panel, come to the circle with the line, which is the add new adjustment layer, and we're going to look for color balance, which is right about in the center of that menu list. Left click on that, and we've added a color balance adjustment layer. And as you can see, for that active layer, these are the properties that are available. And if we look next to the word tone here and go across to this little down arrow, you see you can adjust the shadows, midtones, and highlights, which is what I just said. So for mine, I think I'm only going to work with the shadows and highlights, but let's just see how we go here. So I'll start with the shadows. I'll click on that so it's highlighted there. And now because I'm going mostly warm in this image, I want to have a little bit of pop so it's not too unicolor tonal. How's that for a bunch of words? So I want to get a little bit of blue into my shadows just so that there's a little bit of pop relative to the yellows because they're opposites on the color wheel. So for the shadows, if I want to introduce some blue into the shadows, I would come down to this slider here and pull this handle towards the blues. And again, I can't give you a formula, but I just do a little bit at a time and release, and I watch my image. And then sometimes I go, yeah, see, so look at that. That's gotten way too blue for me. So I'm going to back it off. I just want a hint of blue, so that's good for me. So I have my blue at plus 13 on this one. Okay, so then the next thing I want to do is adjust the highlights, and I definitely want to put more of the warm tones into the highlights. So again, I come across where it says tone, click on that down arrow and be sure that it says highlights if I want to adjust the highlights. So yes, I'm going to work with that same slider, but this time I'm going to go towards the yellows and the warmth. Just click on the little handle and pull. And as I said, I go a little way and release to see what's happening. Oh, it got too yellow. It's not bad. All right, so I will, so you can see it's warming it up. That's good. Okay. Now, if you're doing portraits or working with skin tones, you actually might want to be working with the midtones as well. So I'm not saying to only work with the highlights and the shadows, just you have to kind of gauge it on your image and where you think the impacts for color might be. Why don't I just do one with the midtones just to add it? But for my image, I don't think it really needs it too much. Okay, so let me see here. So again, I think for the midtones, maybe I'll go more towards the warm color here. And I'm watching to be sure it doesn't get too magenta-y looking. All right, I'll leave that there. And then maybe I'll just do a little bit more warmth for the midtones as well. So again, I have to go towards the yellow for the warmth with the yellow. That might be much. Okay. So that's not bad. So that's definitely, so there's the cooler, even with these previous layers, you can see it just keeps building. And that's why I like to do it incrementally and build a series of adjustment layers and then save that series as a template to reuse. Okay, so let's say that we're good with the color balance layer. So let's go on and try a different type of layer, so adjustment layer. So let's try selective color. And again, so selective color adjustment layer lets you work with individual color ranges separately, generally in a more precise way. So it's more fine tuning. You're not going to see really extremes of the colors. This is for more precise color balancing. So let's come down to add new adjustment layer icon right there again. And selective colors down at the very bottom, left click on that. And now we have our selective color layer in the layer stack. And if you look at the properties for that layer, you'll see that there's all the different colors and neutrals that you can adjust for your image. So again, I'm going to start with the reds and the yellows since they're the warmer colors. So I've on the, so oh, just in case you missed it, so here is the list of colors in this box. Here I don't change this default, I just leave that where it is. And I click on this down arrow to expose all the other colors that can be worked with. Okay, so now for the reds, again, it's like what I showed you before with the curve where you get the opposites. So the since this is a cyan slider, if we go to the right, we'll be adding more blues. So we want to go the opposite of blues to get to the reds. So we'll go left here. And like I said, this is going to be subtle, so right, I'll just do a little bit there. And then I'm going to keep adding some more yellows as I go here. And so because it's a yellow slider, if you go to the right, you're increasing yellow. If you come to the left, then you're adding blue. So it's always the opposite if you go the opposite direction. And I'm watching not only in here, but also in the water. Now that might be getting a little too yellowy in the water. I think I'll just leave that about there. Okay, and then with the black, I'm just going to pull it all the way down to the left on here. All right, so now let's try another color and see what we can refine there too. So if we click on this little down arrow, let's see, because these are all cooler looking colors to me, so I don't want to work with them. I want to just stay with the yellow. And again, I don't want to go too heavy-handed with magenta, but I just want to have a little bit of that in there. So just, because it's a magenta slider, to the right is adding magenta. We'll just keep it around 5. Okay, and then more yellow. Just keep adding the yellows. Just check, see where we are here. Yeah, so that's getting that hazy-ish look. So maybe I just sort of like to round it for purposes of demoing, so maybe around 50. There we go. Okay, and then the black I'll take down again a little bit. Okay. All right, so I'll stay there with that. And then let's see if adjusting the whites or the neutrals helps anything here. So I'm going to start with the neutrals. And I think, again, going to the cyan slider, I don't want to go towards the blues. I want to go towards the red. So I'll go left. Yeah, see, that gets too red. So, all right. Oh, by the way, if you see what just happened, if you double click on these handles or double click on the words, it'll reset your slider to 0, so you don't have to slide it the whole way if you want to do a reset. Don't want too much in that. All right, so just a hint of that there, okay? And then with the magenta, I want to get a little bit more green in here. So again, magenta is going to the right, so going the opposite direction would be green. So I'll add a little bit more green in here. Yep, too much. I think that's enough. It might be a little bit too iridescent already. And then yellow on the yellow slider to the right would be more yellow. Just a hint, because we've already got a lot of yellow in here. And then I'll add a little bit of black. Not too much, that gets too heavy-handed. Yeah. Just go up to 2 and see what happens. There we go. All right, so I'll leave that there, and then let's just see what happens if we go to the whites. Since there's a lot of bright areas here. So if I go to the yellow, we actually go the opposite here with the blue a little bit. All right, let me stay around there. And then the black, I'm going to take it down. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Yeah, all right, so it might be a little bit more iridescent than I would typically like, but at least you could see something's happening with it, so we'll leave that there. Okay, so now that would be it for the selective color adjustment layer. So now let's add another adjustment layer. And again, as I said right up front, you don't need to do all these specific adjustment layers. You have a whole choice here on this circle with the line through it. So you can work with whatever ones you want to add color, and you don't need to use a whole bunch of them if you don't feel that you need them. You don't have to do it just for the sake of doing it. All right, so let's try a hue and saturation. I'm just showing you how different adjustment layers work so you can decide which ones you want. So when you're working with the hue and saturation layer, then you can target working with specific color ranges. And what I typically like to do is, you can either work with it globally. So if you were to start sliding the hues, if you actually want to change the hues, you can, move this around like this, and that's affecting the image globally. Okay, or you can increase the saturation, which is awful, or decrease the saturation a little bit. And that's doing that globally. And then you can lessen it. You can make it darker or lighter. Okay, so you can adjust all those different things. What I typically, so that was global and affecting the image globally. What I typically like to do is work with this little targeted adjustment tool that looks like a little pointer finger. And what you do is you would click in your image on the color that you want to sample and work with. So if I were to choose one of these colors in here, then it says, did you see what happened with it too? So when I have that little tool active, you can see inside my highlighter, it's like a little eyedropper. So it's just picking up the color that you click on. So based on where I clicked over here in the middle, it identified that that's in the yellows range. Okay. So then you can either adjust the hue slider for the yellows if you want, which I'm not going to do, or you can work with the saturation, which I'm going to reduce mine a little bit because I had gotten a little bit iridescent. And then I am also going to work with the lightness. As I said, you can go brighter or darker. A little brighter, but I don't want it too blown out. Okay, so I sort of like that kind of a look. Now let's see, now that I did that, maybe I can give it a little more saturation. I'm definitely more of a fan of vibrance than saturation. Saturation can distort colors. Okay, so why don't I just leave that where it is? Okay, so now I think I'll do one more adjustment layer just so you can see another kind of adjustment layer that you can work with, and then I'll call it a day as far as the adjustment layers. So the next one I want to add is a gradient map adjustment layer, and this is definitely an optional kind of a one to use because it's definitely for much more stylized color toning. So coming down to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new adjustment layer, and we're looking for the gradient map right there. Left click on that, and by default it's opening up with a black to white gradient because the color pickers are in black and white, so that's what it's showing there. But I'm not suggesting that we use a black and white on this particular image. I want us to get another maybe a cool to warm, because remember I made the shadows cooler and everything else warmer. So the way to see the other gradients that you might want to work on with is to click just once, left click once on that gradient, and you move this over. It pops open the gradient editor, and you can see that there's a whole bunch of other colors available of different types of gradients. And some of these are ones I've created or I've downloaded, so I'm not going to show you those because I want you to be able to have something you can work with if you want. But you can see there's blues, purples, pinks, reds. So if you expand any of these, you see the range of the gradients that Photoshop is providing. Of course, you can always create your own too. Okay, so I'm showing you warm colors because that's what I'm working with, but of course there's the cool colors too. Now, another thing that comes with Photoshop that you could try are these legacy gradients right here where my highlighter is. And again, you'd click that little caret to expand it, and you can see that there are different types of legacy gradients that you work with. Some of these are kind of a little crazy for what we're trying to do here for this landscape. So I'm just looking for something that would be a cool to warm kind of a thing, and I think something like this would be a really kind of a good one to do. And you can experiment and see what these other ones are depending on, what you want to work with. So I'm just going to click on that once, and you can see it has populated it into where I can edit the gradient. So all you would have to do is click on any of these color stop handles, and then like the more you'd pull it to the right, the more yellows you'd get. The more you'd pull these to the left, the more blues you'd put into the scene. Okay. And if you click on the big color stops, you get these little diamonds that are more for the midtones, so you can adjust those too. See how they appear when I... Okay, so once you get yours where you like, if you even want to work with the gradient map like that, then you would click OK up here at the top of that panel to accept it. And obviously you probably don't want your image to look like that. So what you would then do is come back to the layers panel to that layer, and right here where it says normal, that's the default. These are all the blend modes that you can use. And all you would have to do is mouse over and see how they look. But typically what you're wanting to do is work with either overlay, which is typically more intense and dramatic, or soft light. I typically prefer soft light, so I'll click on the soft light, and that's still kind of crazy. So then the next option you have is just come right across from the blend modes to opacity, and you can reduce your opacity. You can either click on that little down arrow and then pull a slider, or you can do what I prefer to do, which is just left click on the word and start dragging. And I'm going to pull this way down because I just only want this for a little bit of seasoning. Is that enough? Let's see. We can do a little bit more because it didn't really. No, that's too much. Okay, yeah, so that just gave it a little bit of that warm, hazy glow, and then that was enough for me. Now, again, I'd normally spend more time and you know, finesse things more the way I like, but let's just say we're getting through the process here. So as I said, you can use as many or as few of these what are called adjustment layers as you want to build your color style. You don't have to use a ton of them. Once you've got your color stylization the way you want it, and that's what I'm calling this, is a color stylization, because we've gone from the initial blues to this warm, hazy, what I'm calling warm cinematic kind of a look, then you want to select all of these adjustment layers. So not the background layer or the background copy, just the adjustment layer. So the top layer is already highlighted, so you want to press the Shift key and then click on the bottom one of your adjustment layers, so then the shift makes them all select, so you don't have to select them individually like that. And once you do that, you can either do a Control or Command G, like in George, to create a group, or you can come to the bottom of the layers panel and click on this little folder icon, manila folder icon, left click, and you've got the group, and they're all still in there, so you can adjust them if you want to, okay? So then what I typically do then is I name that group, and I try to be descriptive of the color styling that I'm creating. So if you double click on the word, you can type on that. So since we're just doing a demo, let's call this test. Okay. All right, so now we have, if we turn that off, we're back to our original image again. So now the way that you create, so after you've built the template, then you want to save it as a template. So do not flatten all this, okay? You want to save the entire layer stack, including the background layers, all right? So, but you want to save them as a .psd as in David, T as in Tom, or template file. So we go over to the left side of the interface to File, Save As, and then what we want to do is we want a Photoshop layer. So here's the type of file it's going to be is a Photoshop. And the option we want is this very last one right here, .psdt. So again, let's rename this, whoops, file, and I'm going to put this on my desktop here. You get at it, and I'm just going to call it the same thing I called it on the layer. Okay, now you'll notice it did not automatically put the T there. You have to manually do that. So once you get that file name clicked, be sure the .psd is still there. Left click and then just type the T. So we have it as a template file, and then just save it, create a folder maybe for all your different templates. If you're going to have different color gradings and different color stylizations, maybe create one folder where you can save them all too, and then that would be convenient to access them. So once you get that together, then you can save, and it says maximize, you say okay. All right, so now we have the file that we can reapply. All right, so there's actually two methods that you can use to reapply your color style templates to other images, and that's why I wanted to get this smaller for now. Have these other images here so you can see how we can apply them. All right, so here's another image from Yosemite of a different scene. Okay, so this was our base image that we did the color stylization on. This is another scene that I want to look like it's from the same kind of color stylizing as this original one that we did here. Okay. And again, if you're going to work on this, what you should do is duplicate your background layer. So this time I'll just do a Control or Command J to make the duplicate copy. But as I said, if you prefer, you can left click on that background layer, pull it down to the Add New Layer icon, which is the box with the plus, and it'll do the exact same thing. It just gives you a background copy. Okay, so once you have the copy, then the first method that you have to be able to reapply that template that you just created is to open the image that you have just saved. Okay, so for me, I would be going to my desktop and looking for that file. And hopefully I don't have anything personal here. Here it is. So here is my psdt file. So I will click on that and say open. Okay, so now it has opened that file into my layers stack. And now what we have to be able to do, oops, is have it show again, is using this top layer, we want to drag it over onto our new image that we want to color tone. So just left click on that group layer, that little icon, and just drag it over. And there we go. Look at that. You can see it's automatically color converted it. Now, the nice thing is that we can expand this little caret, and if this is just too intense or it's washing out, you can make adjustments. Now, if you want, you could turn off some of the eyes on some of these layers if you want, if you don't think it's needed, or don't go changing the blending mode because we need the pass through for those layers, but you can lower the opacity if it's too intense relative to how your image is looking. Let's see here. Yeah, so that's definitely giving it a little bit more of that warmer sort of look. And again, I would personally spend more time on my own things, but it's just trying to give you the sense of how you can work with this. Okay, so that's one way you can reapply it, is to save that template file. Then you'd have to go off to wherever the folder is that you saved it and reopen it, and then drag that group layer over onto the new image. Another way that you can do it, and it's a lot more convenient, is to add that group layer to your Photoshop libraries. Okay, and then you can just reapply the color templates directly from in the Photoshop interface. So let me make this picture smaller because this is the one that we just did method number one of reapplying, which is to go find the template file, the psdt, open it, and then drag group layer over to the new image that needs color styling. Here's another image in the set, which again you can see is more blue tones. So, and let me duplicate this again so we're not working on things we shouldn't be. All right, so now let me go back to my base image again. Now, the way that you can do this one is to work with the libraries. I don't know if you're familiar with libraries, but if you look down here at the bottom of my interface in the tab right next to properties, I have my libraries panel. So I'll left click on that to activate it. If you don't see libraries in one of your tabs, what you should do is go to the top of the Photoshop interface to the window menu, left click on that, and come down to where it says libraries and then click it so that yours is checked too, and then it will be visible. Okay. Now, what we can do here with libraries is I have created a library called color grading templates in my initials. So anytime I create new color stylizations, I can save them in this library and then easily drag them over onto my images so I don't have to go looking all over my computer to go find them. Okay, so if you want to try that approach, what you would have to do is click on Create New Library, where it has that plus sign, just click, and then give your library a name. So again, you can do whatever you want. I tend to give them descriptive names like warm, cinematic, or I'm sorry, color grading templates. So this is my whole library. So I just called it color grading templates or color stylization templates. Whatever you want to call your library, you can call it. And then once you get your library named, so this isn't just the template, this is the whole library to hold the templates, then you'd click the create button. I'm not going to do that because I already have the library. Okay, so once you get your library created, then again you would go back up to this group layer, left click on it, and drag it. We're going to pray that this works, and just drag it to where it overlays onto that new library. And hopefully it has added it. So then if we click on there, here it is, Test Cinematic Warm Style Template. Okay, so you have added that template, that look that you've created, that color template look that you've created to your library, so you can just easily drag it into other images that you want to color style. And you can see I've created some other ones here. Now, in order to apply it, press and hold the Alt or Option key, click on that one that we just did, and then again drag it into the image and release. And there we go. We've color graded to match with this set of images. And again, this looks a little bit closer to this. So this one I turned down a little bit, but same thing here. You can click on that right caret, and then if you want to turn off the eye visibility for any of these, if it's too much, you can do that. Okay, you can reduce the opacity. Again, don't alter the blend mode because you need that for these layers, but you can lower the opacity if you want, if it's too much. And then once you do that, then you can go on from there too. And if you want, and do additional modifications or layers or whatever you want to do to these images. So this is just the base consistent color stylizing that you're achieving with this. So that is really handy if you want to reuse it either on multiple images, or another thing you could try if you want, I don't know if I'd do it on this image, but let me try it on this one here again, is Alter Option, click and drag. You can apply it multiple times to the same image. Now, I'm not saying that's a good look, but just to let you know, you can do it. Or if you want, you can apply different color templates that you've created on top of each other just by clicking and dragging like that. Okay, so I just want to let you know that you have some flexibility, that you can adjust those. You can add it more than one time. You can go on and do other layers above this, whatever you want. There's a lot of flexibility, but at least now you've gone and gotten from very blue-green looks to, let's say your look is this warm cinematic look, and that's what you want your project or your portfolio to look like. You have a tool with templates in Photoshop based on adjustment layers to do that kind of stylizing. So that is the end of this demo. So in summary, what I did was I explained the value of creating reusable adjustment layer based color templates in Photoshop. We walked through a step-by-step demo of how to create adjustment layer .psdt file templates, and I showed you two different methods for how to apply these templates to your images. And then while doing that, I've showed you a bunch of different adjustment layer types and how they can be used and how they work, and how you could use those for getting different color looks or color styles. So I'd say just have fun experimenting, creating color stylization templates, and those will be complements to using either the lookup tables or LUTs or custom presets or canned Photoshop adjustments such as we would get over here. Okay, so you have different ways to get color looks in Photoshop, and these color stylization templates are just another tool in your digital toolbox. So take care, have fun.